Hello and welcome to this edition of Tech 24. I'm Julia Seeger. As we enter the holiday season, a time during which NGOs launch giving campaigns and more people tend to ponder on generosity, we look at how blockchain and crypto funds are increasing the transparency of donations. We'll speak to the executive director of Unicef France, an agency that has been a pioneer in the domain. And recent years have shown that Google and Apple are monitoring our every move on our cell phones, posing serious privacy issues. But in Test 24, we'll try a device by a French developer that will help you avoid your data being either harvested or correlated. But first, they're a sort of capsule or pod able to carry one or two people from A to B. The Urban Loop project is a greener and cheaper mode of transportation designed by engineering students from eastern France. With the ultimate aim of ridding towns of cars, it could see the day of light as early as 2024. But first, it has to pass a test to beat the world energy saving record for an autonomous vehicle. Emerald Maxwell has more.
Could this be the future of urban transport? The brainchild of French engineering students, the Urban Loop is designed to transport one or two individuals in small capsules on electrified rails at a speed of 60 kilometers an hour. The idea is to plug the transport gap in small or medium-sized cities with no subway system.
The person arrives in front of the station and with their phone, in a single click, chooses their destination. That generates a QR code. The person then scans their QR code on the wall of the station without having to touch anything, and the doors open.
Its designers say the Urban Loop will mean passengers never have to wait for a lift. But above all, it must be energy efficient, consuming less than 1 cent per kilometre in terms of electrical energy, a world record for an autonomous vehicle.
We have gone from an academic idea to something that is completely in keeping with the issues our society faces today. I mean the digital transition, of course, the energy transition, and then also the transition linked to mobility, particularly in urban areas.
5, 4.
A capsule propelled through a long tube is reminiscent of another invention across the pond. Envisioned for longer journeys, the Hyperloop has successfully carried passengers for the first time in the Nevada desert.
Yes!
In this case, they're not on rails, but in a vacuum tube, allowing speeds of up to 1,080 kilometers per hour. That's about 3 times faster than a high-speed train, with no carbon emissions, according to its designers.
And while some people may consider these mobility projects as futuristic, we've actually been transporting humans in tubes on and off for more than 150 years. And to speak more about it, our tech editor is here on set today with us. Peter O'Brien, hello, and thank you for being here.
Hi, Julia.
So the second oldest underground railway in the world was actually a pneumatic one.
Exactly. Let's take a look. It's the London Pneumatic Dispatch Railway, and it was opened in 1863. This is it being tested on the side of the Thames in Battersea. You can see it's this almost airtight tube where they launched these carriages down. 2 of them could take about 12 tons at about 30 miles an hour. And this is all just powered using massive fans. So it actually started off from Euston and went down to Holborn, which you can see on the map here, all the way down to Holborn there. And then a bit later on, it continued over to St. Paul's. The idea was to transport mail around, big, heavy parcels. But of course, human beings, being what they are, couldn't help themselves, and lots of them had a go themselves. So the Duke of Buckingham had a ride, and even the son of Napoleon III when he was visiting London.
So they were lying down in that tube having a ride. So that sounds actually quite claustrophobic. Were there any other systems that looked alike, but where you didn't have to lie down?
Yeah, so meanwhile, while Brits were launching themselves down dirty, dark tubes, over in New York, New Yorkers were having a much more sophisticated experience. So they were using Alfred Ely Beech's 1870 invention, which was a pneumatic train underneath Broadway in New York City. So visitors would enter the waiting room underground, and it was this lavish affair. You had fountains, you had statues, frescoes, and then you'd go into the carriage, which could seat very sophisticated, nice layout, and it had 22 seats in it. And with a massive fan, again, it would propel this carriage about 95 meters down and then suck it back the other way. So contemporary people in New York loved it because the streets above were super, super busy, and about 400,000 people had a go on it in its first year.
Now tell us more about the ancient version of the Hyperloop.
Right, so the Hyperloop obviously is electromagnetic, so it's powered by magnets and it lifts off the ground. And this idea was first proposed by Robert Goddard, who in the early 20th century imagined a kind of Hyperloop which would be above the ground in a vacuum tube and go from city to city in the United States super fast, from coast to coast in fact. He was responding to a brief from his teacher telling him what to imagine transport would be like in the 1950s. Obviously we still haven't got there yet, but something about us just always wants to keep putting people in tubes. So maybe this time we'll finally manage it.
It's really interesting to see how innovation is just ideas developing over centuries. Thank you very much indeed for that, Peter. Now, as we enter the holiday season and many NGOs are launching their charity fundraising campaigns, we ask this question: how can NGOs increase the transparency of donations to regain people's trust? Indeed, NGOs around the world receive money as donations through various channels like government or private donors, businesses, crowdfunding, but also individuals who wish to aid them for the cause they support. But like everywhere else, they also face corruption and money laundering accusations. Now, increasingly, agencies are looking to cryptocurrencies and blockchain to address the issue. Well, for more on this, let's bring in Sébastien Lyon, the Executive Director of Unicef France. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
Now, Unicef, I believe, is one of the first UN body to have launched the cryptocurrency fund, which allows it to receive, hold, and distribute donations made in blockchain-based digital assets. Could you tell us more about this fund and how it actually works?
Yes, of course. Indeed, UNICEF has been one of the first, if not the first, UN agency to accept cryptocurrencies. That was in 2018. At that time, we decided to accept donations in Ethereum to start with, and Bitcoins came right after, and other crypto assets came afterwards. The idea for us is to open up the possibility to have donations from these newcoming cryptocurrencies or crypto assets. And then based on the reception of those crypto assets, we've created a crypto fund, which enables us to spend those cryptocurrency programs that would benefit the children and to our mission as UNICEF. For example, we are using Ethereums to pilot projects with startups to use efficiently blockchain to improve our programs, for example, in keeping safe medical data for the children we are supporting directly on the field.
Now, Sébastien, what are the challenges that NGOs face when receiving donations, and how is blockchain part of the answer?
Well, the classic challenge that we have as an NGO or as an organization receiving donations is to ensure to the public transparency vis-à-vis the use of the donations that we receive. Blockchain is a nice way, or traceability of the donation from the donor to us, UNICEF, to the actual beneficiary of the donation. So it has a potential to enable us to track donations from the donor directly to the beneficiary. So in that sense, obviously this is a strong factor for enabling trust in the future from the donors to the NGO or to the organization they want to support.
Now, for our viewers, could you explain in a very concrete manner how blockchain and crypto can help children around the world?
Well, crypto first is an asset, so it's donations that enables us to do programs. So it's additional funds, if you will, to enable us to fulfill our mandate. So that's basically more funds helping us to help more children. For the blockchain itself, the technology, because it's very decentralized, because it's not possible to forge, has several good possible uses for us in terms of improving our program. One example I can mention is birth registration. Birth registration is still a huge challenge for many countries because documents get lost, because after a conflict or a war, people have to flee and they don't have the documents. And then afterwards, it's very complicated for them. If you don't have a birth certificate, you can't access school, you can't access health centers. You can't, of course, have a passport, and so on and so forth. So for us, birth registration is one of the most important rights for the children. blockchain has a strong potential for us to enable many children to be registered in a blockchain, and that data will be kept forever in a very safe way, which will enable them to have access to this data later on. Even if there is an earthquake or a war or something, we will still be able to access the data. So in that sense, there are many pilot projects at the moment with blockchain as a possible game changer for bus registration. Some countries have already adopted blockchain as the reference technology for bus registration. So we're looking into that with a huge potential to fulfill children's rights in the future.
Sébastien Lyon, the Executive Director of Unicef France, thank you for that.
Thank you. Goodbye.
And it's time now for Test 24. With all the data harvesting scandals we've seen in recent years, and if you aren't ready to return to the pen and paper life, you might want your next phone to have your privacy locked down. And this can be actually quite tricky to achieve if you aren't very tech savvy. But the French developer IOD claims to have the solution, Peter.
That's right. So I've got with me here a Samsung Galaxy S9, which IOD has actually refurbished. So they've installed their own version of stock Android on it, and a couple of features that help you avoid being tracked by Google. So they've removed Google mobile services, which you can do yourself on a Android device, but it is quite tricky, as you say. You do risk bricking your phone. So if you don't want to do that, you can leave it to IOD. And not only did they remove Google mobile services, they've also got this app here, the IOD app, which allows you to see exactly what trackers are being used at what point. But the problem with this app they've got is that it's not open source. So for a privacy-conscious phone, that's a bit of a headache. I think they're working on an update for that in the future, so they should get that sorted out.
That would make more sense to be open source indeed. Who are the competitors?
So they're up against the E Foundation, who's doing a similar thing. They're also selling refurbished, de-Googled phones, but they've actually partnered up with the Fairphone, which is this Dutch company which makes this phone, which is repair-friendly and sustainable, so you can get a new Fairphone with the E operating system on it.
The Fairphone that we have actually tried here on the set of Test 24. Thank you very much indeed for that, Peter. It brings us to the end of this edition of Tech 24. See you soon.